everyone. Welcome. For those of you who are at our last artist talk, I hope you're more comfortable this time. For those of you who are very uncomfortable, I'm sorry. This is better than very often. We've tried to accommodate as many people as we can. If you get very uncomfortable and need to wriggle around, we do wriggle. I'm Fiona Bradley. I'm the director of the Fruitmarket Gallery. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here this afternoon, and of course to welcome Mark Wallinger, whose exhibition opens here today. It's a doubled exhibition, as you know, Mark Wallinger and Mark. Sadly, only one of Mark turned up, which is a little bit disappointing for us, but there are two exhibitions, as I'm sure you know. The exhibition here is doubled with an exhibition at Dundee Contemporary Arts. It's actually doubly doubled, or triply doubled, because the exhibition started at the Stylistically Museums in Manta in Finland, and came to Scotland following that exhibition. It's also got a little extra bit here. The exhibition halls in Manta are very much larger than anything we can muster here. So one of Mark's works, the film The End, is showing at the Ingleby Gallery for the next 2 weeks as part of their rather extraordinarily wonderful programme where they're showing a different artwork every 2 weeks for the whole year. So you have to keep going up to Ingleby Gallery a lot this year, but do go up and see The End. It's the most fantastic film. So that's there. Mark and I have to take watch off. Mark and I are going to talk for about 45 minutes, and then pretty much the opening starts quite soon after that. Mark has very generously agreed to sign copies of the book. So after the end of the talk, we'll move and sit down there. And if you have questions for Mark and you would like to purchase a book at the bargain price of £20 from the bookshop so that Mark can sign it, he's very kindly agreed to do that. So, Mark, welcome. It's fantastic for me, obviously, to be in conversation with you in the context of this exhibition, with these extraordinary works behind us, but I want to start with a work that's not in the exhibition, not in any of the exhibitions, and you'll know why I want to start with it. The work I want to start with is State Britain, which is the work with which Mark won the Turner Prize in 2007. It's a meticulous recreation of Brian Hall's protest camp outside the House of Parliament in Westminster. And I wanted to start, we talk about this exhibition as tracing a path to do with identity and multiple selves and the performance of identity and what it is to be an individual in society in your work. And I wanted to start with State Britain because I wanted to start with the notion of the public self and what it was that drew you or forced you really to take account, or was it to take account of Brian Hall as an individual, taking account of himself in the social fit? What was it that drew you to make that work?
I mean, oddly in a way, it was the strange opportunity that I was suddenly offered. So right. I got a phone call from the Tate saying that they asking me if I might have any ideas for the Dundee Galleries at Tate Britain for the following January. This was sometime in April. Mm-hmm. And they said they'd asked me and a couple of other artists. Basically, something had dropped out of their programme, so you know, they needed someone to come back with an idea quite fast. So I at that point I'd been taking some photographs of what Brian had been doing, what his peace camp was there. But it was.
Had you been taking photographs with a view to making work, or just taking?
No, just because yeah. I mean, I think. At this point, the Serious Crime and Police Act had come in, which curtailed certain process. Well, one had to apply to make a protest within this 1 kilometre exclusion zone. I mean, it was a strange and very badly made law that was largely made to try and get rid of Brian, really. He was an embarrassment.
You think it was specifically so it was the state against one individual, really?
Well, quite largely, yes. And it was so badly framed that in the end he was the only person there still with leave to protest, you know, so it was very ironic. But anyway, so that kind of infringement on freedom of speech, freedom of expression was kind of quite uppermost in my mind as well. And then then the idea just sort of came to me, and then I had to, of course, put it to Brian. And I mean, the other thing about Brian, one should say at the time as well, that he was considered a crank by a lot of people. You know, a lot of newspapers, even the Guardian, were very dismissive, and you could tell by most of these people would never take the trouble to cross the road to see what he had to say, and just quite how extraordinary that process was. And so Brian was up for it, which was obviously
was that
vital.
a difficult thing to do, to go and say to Brian? Because
it was sort of difficult, but actually it was quite odd. It was like one of those ideas that kind of, it just, to me, it seemed like, well, this kind of is like the best idea to do something about this at this moment, you know. And it looked like what also changed about this time as well was that they gave over to the police the full responsibility to determine what constituted a legitimate protest, which seems to be, you know, forestalling some part of, like the judiciary and everything else. So it looked like his time there would.
So was there a sense in which you felt you could legitimise this protest by?
Well, I just think that someone could, and then I kind of, around about the same time, I was looking on the map and kind of trying to see where this 1 kilometre exclusion zone would go, and got the biggest scale ordnance survey map you can have, which is like printed out, bespoke by Stanford's, and drew this circle and discovered not only ran through Tate Britain, but through the Dundee galleries and the Octagon. So it was like, so in the end it became an idea that just sort of needed to happen. And
I think one of the things that struck me about it, because it was a work I read about and I read a lot about before I saw it, and sometimes, I don't know if you think about it, I feel there are some works that you think, I don't need to see that. That's mostly an idea. And it's a great idea. There's the exclusion zone. It's going to run through this work. I don't need to see it. And when I did see it, I was struck by the fact that I was completely and utterly wrong, and that you really needed to see that work. And I was paying attention to something that I knew was a real thing, or that I knew wasn't a real thing, was a facsimile of a thing. But there was something about looking at that facsimile that made me pay more attention to it than the real thing in the newspapers or Brian's actual. There's something about what art can do, I think, and much more than that, just putting it in an art gallery or change of context and it's an artwork, but much more about the kind of attention that an artist pays to something. And maybe it's around issues of identification. I don't know whether it is identifying with Brian or.
I think so, and I think it's just a sort of basic. I suppose, in a funny kind of way, it's part of my more general fascination with illusion and representation, and I suppose when you make something to that degree of verisimilitude, it appeals on some kind of deep level to the same way that we appreciate a beautiful Dutch still life or something. So we kind of, we know what a lemon looks like. Look how he's done that, and it's kind of like when it's a facsimile of something real that has been tended to in every particular detail, and generally things that are given that degree of detail, or it's obviously part of an incredibly big project to reproduce that's a top-down decision. Big cheeses kind of make those decisions, governments make those decisions too. This thing is important and it demands all this amount of work and attention. So I think
it's nice for you to do that.
But
I certainly felt it gave, as a viewer, it gave you permission to look at these quite horrific images actually that Brian had assembled without any sense of the voyeuristic or I don't know, it gave you both the freedom to look and the incredible responsibility to do something about that. I don't know if I felt so called to act or to think, to actually to be to feel accountable, to feel counted in front of that thing. It was it was an extraordinarily active work, I suppose, which, as I say, surprised me. And in a stroke of total genius, and I'd like to think it was a curatorial stroke of genius, but I'm sure it was yours. When you made the exhibition for the Turner Prize, you showed sort of you were shortlisted for State Britain, and you showed Sleeper, the film which is through that wall. You won't have seen it yet, any of you, but I urge you, after you've bought the book and come and had it signed, rush through there, because it's the most extraordinary film, and somehow they're linked, aren't they, in terms of paying attention to something, the public self, the private self. Tell us a little. So it's a performance that you made in Berlin, so a sort of political, contested space.
Yes. I mean, it's called Sleeper. I suppose that's a reference to the Cold War and spies and the practice of double agents being.
But it's made after the war comes down, after the.
Yes. So it's 2000. So this was 2004, and I lived in Berlin for a couple of years, and for the first year I was on a DAAD fellowship, and at the end of which you actively have an exhibition, and and anyway, so I was there, and I stayed on another year, and during that time I used to pass by the Neue National Gallery, the great East Road building, quite often at night, and it was a slightly unloved, underused building, and at night it was just rather black, glassy, and forbidding, and anyway, so that was going on in the back of my mind. There was I used to pay trips out to the film studios in Babelsberg, which is kind of.
It can't be a real name, Babelsberg.
It's quite something, isn't it? Yeah.
Did they just name it that for you?
Yeah. Well, it was a bit like that. It's kind of, their back lot. There was a street there that was, fascinatingly just a facade. One end of which had been used for Roman Polanski's The Pianist, so it was like the Warsaw Ghetto, and the other end of the same street was a bit of Chicago for Kevin Spacey's biopic of Bobby Darin, so it's just, but
talk about words colliding.
Yeah, but it was there in 1957 that they made a film called The Singing Ringing Tree, which the BBC serialised in the 60s.
How did you know that? How did you know that they made that there?
I suppose I was curious enough to
find out.
To find out, and that is kind of seared in the soul of my generation.
That TV program.
Yeah, so it's a Grimm Brothers type story. It's not actually a Grimm Brothers story, but a selfish princess sends a prince on this quest for the singing ringing tree, and in his an act of boastful hubris, this evil dwarf turns him into a bear, and you return week in, week out, and to this program, and he's still a bear. And I think that played with the sort of terror you have as a child, those transformation stories.
He wasn't a happy bear.
No, he wasn't. And these, things should be brought back to normal. Well, making friends in Berlin, I discovered my friends from the former East knew this film, and the Western ones didn't. And so I thought that was rather wonderful that we had this, at the time, unknown kind of psychic kind of connection.
And did that make you feel less foreign or less different to know that you share this childhood
I think it was
culture? I mean, we're made out of these things we're made out of things we watch on the telly when we're children. I think, aren't they? They are deep.
Yeah. Well, I think Berlin's a bit of a place that wears all its scars and its past and everything, and so that becomes just a fascinating place to be, slightly an alien in, and the bear is the symbol of Berlin, and one thing and another. I suddenly thought, well, some kind of presence in this building at night, illuminated, would be quite striking, and then the idea of me in a bear suit arrived,
in the Tempting Hudson book that you've made with Martin Herbert, you talk very nicely about holding on to one half of, or being comfortable with the idea of holding on to one half of something, one half of an idea, until the other half comes along
Yeah.
Was it like that with that work?
Yes, it was a bit, I suppose. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I knew you know, that feeling, it's like a taste in the head. So there was something about that building I knew that I had some sort of thing about, and then the rest of it sort of came together. And then
it's kind of not obvious for most of us. I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then I also used to go to the zoo quite a lot as well. So, and there's a hilarious story about filming the bonobos there, but that's for another time. But they, you get there, and there's this rather poignant sign by the brown bears who live on a sort of island with a moat surrounding it, explaining how they were all sterilised because there are enough brown bears in zoos around the world, and they can't be released into the wild because of the harm they might do humans, you know. And so I was thinking, well, wow, they've become their own symbol. Like, yeah. So
that's quite bizarre for someone to decide there are enough of you.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. So, so then I.
So you made the only piece of performance art you've properly made.
Yes. So it then took nearly 2 years to find a slot where the building was completely empty, and through that time, I suppose I plenty of time to think about what I might actually do with that. when I knew really I would just sort of shamble about in a bear suit, you know, so I was like trying to sort of almost double, triple bluff myself with all these ideas of what I'd do.
You might do something symbolic.
Yeah. But I think what I wanted to achieve is that thing, which is again it's a bit like going to the zoo. If you go to the zoo and you get there, the bear's asleep. You don't think, that doesn't count. You know, so I was hoping that kind of, you know, just that kind of human presence, all that unaccountable thing happening through the glass. I was on the glass
So you did the performance over a series of nights, dressed as a bear, in this extraordinarily iconic building, glass building, and no one else was in the building. So the whole, I think, as you watch it as a viewer, so it was filmed and it now exists as a film, shown in a very particular environment, which places you really, I think, in a very strange architectural environment, and the screen acts like the glass of the building. In a way, it's very clear that the performance is taking place on the other side of something, the other side of glass, the other side of the imagination. Or there is a sense that. Did you feel when you're making the performance, were you aware that you're operating in a symbolic space or in a different?
Yeah, I did, and it was. Yeah, and the fact that I was the artwork as well, so and I was kind of almost like kind of naked in disguise. So it was, and that was a very liberating feeling, and it was kind of fun. It was incredibly hot in this bear suit, you know.
So then you were feeling quite other, looking quite other,
and
feeling quite other.
And the night it was filmed, it was freezing cold outside, so I was very much aware that I was probably about 35 degrees different to the people outside. Yeah.
So, in a way, it's the only performance you've done, it was you. And this is a show we've talked a lot, in the course of getting this show together and all the writing that we've done about it. It is an exhibition about identity and about the performance of identity, the trying on of different selves.
Yeah.
I'm aware that in all the works in the exhibition, there's actually very little of you.
Yeah.
And as you say, that is, you are the artwork there. It is actually you.
Yeah.
Of course, it doesn't look like you. It's some kind of self. There is a sort of putting on of a suit, of a disguise.
Yeah.
So I'm working through here to move seamlessly to notions of likeness and what it means for something to be like something else. And I wanted to talk about that with reference to one of the works downstairs, which is called I Am Innocent, and is a reproduction of Velázquez's portrait of Pope Innocent X. And I wanted to just talk with you a little bit about that notion of personae and what with that work is it that drew you to that, to make work with that work? Is it the notion of the Pope as a persona? When you become the Pope, you try on a different persona. There's a huge lack of verisimilitude in that work, in that staging. The work you have made seems to me again to be about facsimiles and unlikeness or likeness.
Yes, I suppose. I think there's probably like. I mean, that Velasquez portrait is possibly one of the most authoritative portraits of anyone, because that figure, that gaze has such authority, even if it is a little shifty or a little strange. It's almost transcends itself as a painting.
Do you think it is about the gaze? Is the original painting, you think, about the gaze? It's giving him the authority of God's representative on earth. He's looking at you, and he's probably deciding you want him, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, Velasquez knew the man, you know, from Madrid before he painted him in Rome, and I mean, I think all the rest of Velasquez were attest to acute psychological insight. So but I think it's also about the extraordinary thing that we do in looking at a portrait like that, which is we're looking through the eyes of one dead man and another dead man, and yet we trust utterly that this man lived, and we recognise him as he hangs on the roof, and we kind of have some strong idea of what he was like. Really.
What he's actually like, as well as what he looks like.
Yeah. And I think those things that edge. I mean, it's with the bear. You know, apart from me being naked in disguise, you know, bear is a homophone for naked, if you like, you know, in English. But you know, the fact was that obviously I'm an Englishman, I'm an alien in that thing, but I could be part of his German. I'm wearing the symbol of Berlin, or or is it Soviet bear, or whatever.
Do you think that is you are a double agent, you're trying to pass as...
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, you know, in a city like Berlin, you know, you can exist in a kind of mute bubble and kind of pass as a, you know,
So there's something about being the individual in a crowd then, there is that sort of sense that in a big city or in a different city you get a sense of yourself as invisible. So, or maybe now, so many people are looking at you, they can't see you, actually.
Yeah, I think you experience things, more, not in the purity of phenomena, but they're in terms of their difference, then that's kind of vivid and prickles with kind of possibility in a sense.
So what you've done with Pope Innocent X is play around, it's literally flippant, play around with his likeness. There's Velasquez trying to make a likeness, a true likeness, a likeness that the gentleman in question could recognise himself, and you've taken liberties with him.
Yes, I mean, I've set him spinning, and I've kind of, one half is mirrored as well, and I guess that's plays against certain illusions that are bilateral, that we are actually kind of quite, we look at ourselves in the mirror, so photographs of ourselves look slightly
That's
because we're used to seeing ourselves and so in a sense I wanted to turn that into some kind of bizarre spinning self-portrait kind of,
a self-portrait?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, that portrait would have existed for Innocent X, after Velasquez went back to Madrid, he never came back again. So that thing became more important for the person portrayed and that milieu, and for the authority of his image. And in the absence of the camera or any other media like that would stand for him.
Because it's still in his house, isn't it? Still in the family house. So it does have that rather intimate relationship with him, you imagine. It's not in a papal palace or in a public sphere, actually, it's a private. Or it was intended as a private likeness, is it?
Yeah, and there's a bust of him as well in the same room by Bernini, and if you would take two artists you would trust to get an accurate portrayal of a person.
So is the work, do you think, is it more about the notion of likeness and identity and taking likeness than it is about religion? Because you've made works that play with ideas of religion, that look at ideas of religion. Is it important that he's a pope? It's obviously important he's called Innocent.
Yes, it is. It is. I am innocent. Yeah, yeah. I think the idea of God's emissary, you know, and on earth, and how human he would be. I suppose it's sort of.
Because another of the works that's not in this show, which is another of possibly your most well-known works, is Ecce Homo, is a life-size cast of man as Christ at that behold the man moment. And there's a sense in which, you know, that is and isn't to do with religion as well. That is and isn't to do with a man in place of God or God in place of man.
Yes.
Is there a kinship between those two works, you think, or not? Because I really don't know the answer to this, whether there is or isn't, whether they are looking at similar.
Well, I think, you know, much as the Pope's bound to look like an individual human being, then the same goes for Christ, I suppose. I mean, there's you know, that moment, say, in the Pasolini film, Gospel according to St. Matthew, you know, happens kind of in a crowd, in a bit of a blur, and he's just one amongst the many. And it was important to me, you know, we're coming up to the millennium, that was the prompt to make Ecce Homo for Trafalgar Square at that point. And once I had the idea, it was essential that it was a depiction of a real, actual person rather than a generic figure. And I suppose that there is almost this sense that, you know, Christ is so holy. How can he, you know, have a particular nose, or kind of what colour eyes would he have? Do you know what I mean? So I suppose that kind of filters through to the Pope at the end, and you kind of, you're wary about his look because you're thinking, well, who are you to kind of assume this, and we kind of assume that he's probably corrupt and all the rest of it.
But whose eyes is he looking with, or what authority does he? There's the big man behind him giving him his authority. Authority and talking people behind you or looking at, I wanted to think a little bit about the work downstairs according to Mark, which has something of the religious about it. It's called According to Mark. It has that. You know, you're very, very good, I think, at summoning an entire world with a particular turn of phrase. When we read that a work is called According to Mark, we're right there in the Gospels. There is, you know, you're very good at that. And what we have there, I suppose, is almost like is the people looking at the Pope, if you like, or looking at Christ. There is 100 chairs set out as if for a meeting.
Yes, I mean, I suppose it's and it's also it's also a kind of a work about perspective, which you know is this marvellous thing that feels somewhere between invention and discovery, but was really also kind of revolutionary, not just in formal terms, but in terms of art, but art that was necessarily, generally speaking, but most importantly, of religion. So,
did you find, that's why I question, did you find out about perspective through art history or at art school? Or did you find out by reading about it or by trying to do it?
Oh, just, when I was quite young, just...
But in the context of old master painting and drawing?
Perhaps a bit, because they, Massaccio's Holy Trinity is generally held up as the first great work.
Because that's how I find out about perspective, but I didn't go to art school, so it interests me really. Is it a kind of mechanical thing, or is it a theoretical thing?
And well, I mean, the story about Brunelleschi and the baptistry and all that is rather wonderful and kind of hilarious as well. But in terms of the Holy Trinity, for instance, the viewer completes the scene, where up to that point paintings had been these rather Teflon icons, and they were sort of representations, but perspective introduces you as the completion of the work, your perception.
So it enables an artwork to be generous to the viewer, to include the viewer in a way that we would think of as, I would think of as a quite contemporary thing. The notion of a generous artwork, the notion of an artwork that cares who's looking at it or thinks about them. Very famously here in Scotland is the environmental art course that David Harding thought up. Look, involved artists in thinking about where their work was sited and who was looking at it.
Yeah.
That active perspective is doing that. That's exactly what it's for.
Yeah.
Put you in the right place when.
And it kind of implicates you as well. So it's almost like so things that you could take or leave before. So this introduced a different kind of philosophical space, really. Yeah.
So, according to Mark, as much about that, as much about you can either cite yourself looking at that work in the context of perspective, pictorial perspective. So it's a kind of a 3D. 2D picture, or you can cite yourself in that work by metaphorically putting yourself, metaphorically please, not actually in one of the chairs. You can imagine yourself sitting down. And are those two things that play at once? You can be outside the...
So I think, you can kind of, it's almost like you can, I think the other thing is the wonder of turning 3 dimensions into 2, which is a kind of transubstantiation. It is almost like a religious miracle, and it's one that we still find endlessly fascinating, and that's why 3D films will never have their day, because we love the way the solid and the world around us can be projected into two dimensions.
And so we can read that, we can understand it.
And that's kind of that's a kind of immense power as well. But also I like the fact as well that the vanishing point, when you actually construct a scene, seems to be also like the core, the point, the kind of big bang of it seems the point of creation as well.
So it's the end and the beginning.
And so something as well that seems to be almost that ambiguous thing between creation and discovery.
So according to Mark, we have lots of sort of absent individuals, really, people who are not there. But you imagine, I think it's very hard to think of a chair and not think of an individual. You put individuals on there, and I wanted to think a little bit about, so it looks at collective identity, it looks at individual identity within that, and I wanted to look at the notion of saying I, what it is to say, what that word. So you've made a lot of work around the saying of I, and I want to think a little bit about the self-portraits downstairs, what it was that drew you to make works which literally said I, and what the process of thinking about that was, whether it was a quick one, whether it was I know what I'm going to do, or coming towards that sense that you could make are they portraits of you, or are they portraits of you saying I, or are they portraits of us? Because I think when I look at one of those, I see a portrait of me. It's nothing to do with you. I'm looking at this thing, and this thing is saying I, and that's me saying I.
I suppose I kind of, they started around about 2007, which was probably just after State Britain, and I.
Because it's extraordinary leap from making something like State Britain to making paintings at all. I mean, I know you trained as a painter, and I do always think of you as someone who's the elephant in the room. I'm sorry, we will get to them at some point. Somebody who makes paintings. But it was quite a leap to make paintings for State Britain, was it? Or were you just relieved, just thrilled to be in the studio making them?
Yeah, I think I was kind of, it is quite tricky sometimes kind of having, since Ecce Homo, I've been invited to apply for various competition commissions, which I've tended to do because I think it's important that art is out there, is public, and I think obviously we're not littering a place like the Victorians, but there's very little public art that's kind of out there post-war, but at the same time, that does give it a rather stuttering. It's nice to get into the studio and just things happening just through daily practice, and
you and it, because presumably State Britain as well involved a lot of other people helping you make it. The outside commissions involved a lot of people. Is there something very cathartic, is that the wrong word, about it being you and this canvas and what are you going to do?
Definitely. And I think, in a sense, these paintings were a kind of apotheosis of that. That was kind of like, I'd eventually finally found a kind of little machine for making, yeah.
Because I suppose the very act of making a painting, making any kind of art, is a saying of I, isn't it? The sense that you're interested enough in your own ideas or in an idea to make art out of it.
Yeah.
So all art making is really a saying of I think people should look at this. I'm interested in this.
Yes, and I suppose whatever the verb is that's going to be after I is sort of kind of pregnant or enacted in how those turn out or how they...
We've got a fantastic example of the saying of I in Adam over there, the found poem that I had only ever seen printed in a book before we decided to put it in this exhibition. The repeated saying of I, the repeated doing of I, which I think animates these in a very particular way and helps us understand the paintings as that.
Yeah. This was, so that's from 2003, and it's a found poem. It's I think it's 28 lines, but you know, at the back of Paul Graves' Golden Treasury of English Verse, you know, you have an index of poems, titles, and then you have an index of first lines, and that's all the lines that begin with I in alphabetical order, and it kind of it scans, it kind of works in a way, it expresses a kind of yearning that seems to be at the heart of the sort of lyric impulse and English poetry itself, and so that's
They're verbs, aren't they? It's a poem of doing.
Yeah.
The subject is, and the subject you've identified as Adam, and as Mark pointed out to me, it took me an awfully long time to get this. Adam is the first person, and it's a poem about the first person. But he, the first person, is in his first person. He's expressing doing. One of our colleagues, I thought very interestingly yesterday, brought to both of our my attention that the Golden Treasury is a collection of poems by dead writers.
Yeah.
So it's a collection of dead selves in a way.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. But what we have there is somebody multiply doing something, defining this I by what this I is doing. And I suppose we could come to looking at these and in the context of the eye of the self-portrait painting downstairs, but by thinking about that, I think what putting Adam in the room with these paintings, these are the id paintings, Mark's most recent works. What putting them in the room, putting it in the room with these does is set them moving. To me, it sets them back as something made, as something about action and the action with which they were made.
Yeah.
It might not do that for you at all.
No, it does. I mean, yes, I do say I went from painted eyes to I paint, and I paint, that is your noun and verb, and that's kind of essentially it. What you see is what I painted and where I went.
Because you talk about Mark, don't you? Mark, with the name of which you mark the chairs downstairs as being noun and verb.
Yeah.
So the notion of a word as having actually intrinsic in it is obviously important to you.
Yes, yeah. No, I think I've enjoyed playing with my name in that manner. But and I think this was the initial, the first day that I started making these, it was one of those rare kind of eureka moments where I sort of slathered up both my hands in paint and realised I could achieve a kind of symmetry and painted almost blindly and then stepped back and...
Because the eye paintings, the self-portrait paintings are painted with brushes. They're painted traditionally. Yeah. They might not be traditional self-portraits, although they are quintessentially the saying of eye. But these, no brushes out the window. No,
and they're to my proportions, which is, the width is my span, which is one's height, and they're double height. So they kind of, they felt right in terms of their proportions. When I walked back and saw the thing, that it was the traces of this kind of little performance or whatever that had happened there. It had something of the raw, sharp symmetry, and it had that thing that if you have a mark and it's mirrored mark, then they gather a sort of authority that just a random mark wouldn't have.
So it's the making of these is a very conscious process. There's a set of very deliberate rules set up. They're always the same size. They have this doubled relationship to you. There are two of you in a row, and they're made in this doubled way. You paint the bottom half, you turn it upside down, you paint the top half. So they're very rule-ridden. They're very self-conscious in a way. They're a self-conscious figuring of something.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they didn't, in a sense, they didn't feel like that. In that, I was a bit slow for the penny to drop. In that, I made 10 or a dozen of these, or larger self-portraits on the canvases of each scale, and then towards the end, I was using my fingers, and then I did a kind of hand-printed thing that was which was symmetrical, but still clung onto the motif of the eye. And then when I suddenly felt I had the freedom to do this symmetrical, very kind of, intuitive play, it felt more like play, and it's like, so if I had some rules, the other thing that I didn't have were the sort of restrictions, or I mean, basically it was hundreds of brushes I no longer needed. They were always going to be black and white, don't have to think about that. So, and the paint always had to be live. I could never allow myself to paint wet over dry. So,
So is it a similar thing? You're thinking like the thing which gave rise to Sleepy. You're thinking about something for quite a long time. The rules are beginning to assert themselves. They come in one by one. They're going to be this size. They're going to be this colour. And then off you go. And you made 66 of them.
I did, yeah.
Did you know when you started you were going to make 66 of them?
Not at all, no.
Would that be quite scary?
Yeah, perhaps. But I mean, fairly soon, they could be, I knew there would be quite a few, because they kind of changed and mutated and gave enough back that gave me enough encouragement just to do more, really. So, yeah.
And is that what they looked like, or was it how it felt to make them that was...
It was both, really. Yeah. And I was not the happiest of people at the time, and so they became rather important to me, in that they were, what came back was rather encouraging and kind of, and weird, and had sent me down a path I could never imagine, so step by step, and then suddenly you get somewhere and things take off in a completely unexpected way, and that's kind of what can happen in studio practice, but not very often.
And is that something you like, to be able to be taken by surprise by someone you've made, to be, presumably you've got to be interested in it?
Oh yeah. No, yeah. I mean, either my work is about recognition of something, or it's about me thinking, well, I wonder what that would look like, and so either way, I've either got an enthusiasm about noticing something and wanting to kind of share this with people, or else, something's happened.
They embody all kinds of contradictions to me, I think, these paintings. They are clearly important to you. They are, in a way, expressions of a quite private moment. They are very personal, very private stuff, and they're massive.
Yeah.
They are very publicly, you put it all out there. They impose themselves. They bring that moment of making them right into this room, and they bring us, I think, right into their space. They do that classic, the way in which only large paintings actually can be that intimate, that you can get that close to them and they speak to you that directly. And I mean, it's interesting that you always talk about them being your scale. You always talk about them as being your scale.
Yes.
And obviously they're not. They're enormous. They're very, very tall. I know doubling is important. Cunning is important. Things are mirrored and doubled, but you never thought you would just make the single one of them?
No, because in a way, I mean, we are sort of bilateral creatures, and so one can kind of read that much into it. There's a symmetry there, but
on our heads.
No, but the symmetry of there seems to invite a dialogue between this and that. So once I turn the thing up the other way, then I'm in dialogue with something that was strange already, and this is suddenly estranged, and so that was the extra kick in the machinery that took it from being just a bit of a record of messing about into something that then made its own different demands, you know.
And obviously I very much like that, because I think there is something about the uncanny about them, that's secretly familiar, that you know exactly what they're doing, but you don't quite know exactly what they're doing, because in doubling them you have made them very strange and other, and I think they explore all of that, and like so much of your work, they leave room for us. They're generous works, they don't fend us off, they rather invite us in. I think one of the things that I'm very, very pleased with about the show, and I sort of hoped it would happen, is when we've brought together all these multiple selves, all this sense of trying on of persona, what we've ended up with is a series of eyes, is a series of ways of being an individual or expressing being an individual that reaches out to us all, I think, and makes us think about how individuals are important. I think the public and the private move together. Yes,
and I think they play, you know, there's certain pathos and bathos in these, in that they play upon, you know, those notions of artist intention, but you know, they plainly throw up so many images unconsciously in any kind of viewer that there's this,
I think you leave room, is what I'm trying to say. You don't. You know, you are an incredibly intelligent artist. There is a sense you've been there already. You've gone up the path that we're about to go up, but you leave room for us to go up it. You don't say, well, that's what that's about. You have to think about that. Is it? I suppose I know we have to stop, but do you when you're making the work, I suppose, do you think about how and who they're for? Are they for you?
Well, I think it would just get on my nerves if I felt hectored by work. So so I try not to do
that.
And
about
I think
leaving these before they're finished, before you've pleased with them, or is there something in that kind of stepping away?
Yeah, and I think there's the sort of I mean, the whole time you're trying to achieve a kind of rightness or beauty or you know, the thing that you think you've found is something that is suddenly appropriate, or it's suddenly or look at that. You know, I mean, it's got to do that rather than like, I'm telling you to look at this. You know, it's so. You know, if we go back to State Britain, for instance, perhaps, you know, I mean, in a sense, in the context of what was going on in Trafalgar Square and that new act and the fact that Brian's process was removed, you know, the day after I proposed remaking it, and in a sense, something like that, it's quite nice to think that they kind of need making. Also, this is indulgent by comparison, but there has to be kind of like degrees of some kind of imperative that you know.
Well, then they make new meanings, don't they? They intersect with the world in different ways. So when you remade Brian's Protest, you didn't know it was going to be dismantled. You didn't know you would end up with the only record of that. And when you make these, you can't know what kind of horror is going to unfold in the world, or what kind of you can't know the context with which people are going to come to them. No. So you need to make things that can stand up to that.
Yeah.
I guess. And I would say you have rather spectacular. We're going to have to stop because it's 5 to 6. What happens next is the opening of this exhibition. There will obviously have to be a lot of milling around as we get chairs downstairs and as we reassemble ourselves for the opening. Please do feel free to stay around, look at the exhibition. As I say, come and talk to Mark. We're going to station ourselves here. Will you please join me, though? I think we have exhausted Mark these 2 days. He's been here for a week installing exhibitions both here and in Dundee. He's done talks in Dundee, a whole opening in Dundee yesterday, and now here tonight. It's a lot to ask of an artist, and you've written so magnificently to the occasion. We are privileged and proud, and I get to spend the next 2 months thinking about these, and I'm so excited by that. So thank you very, very much for talking about this.